She was 8 months pregnant when the man in the black overcoat walked into the restaurant. He sat at the corner table. He ordered linguine. She brought him bread and wine. He ate slowly. He thanked her. When she cleared his cup, he folded a bill into the saucer and slid it toward her. $500. More than she made in a week. She looked at the money. She looked at her belly. Then she did something nobody in that room had ever seen anyone do to him. She slid the bill back across the table. She said no. The whole place went quiet. The four men too, tables over, stopped breathing. Her grandfather dropped his towel. What happened next saved 3 lives and ended 1. If you have wondered what real honor looks like in a room of dangerous men, stay with me. The ending will surprise you. The restaurant sat on a narrow street where the brick was the color of old wine, and the street lamps still hummed the way street lamps used to hum. It had been there since 1962. The tile floor was worn down in 2 long curves, where the waitstaff had walked the same path for 60 years. From the kitchen door to the window booths and back again. The tablecloths were white. The candles in the little glass jars were real. The bread came out warm because the owner refused to serve it any other way. The owner was the girl's grandfather. He had run the place since he was 41 years old, and he was now 78. He was still there every night. He still tasted the sauce. He still walked the dining room with his hands behind his back, nodding at the regulars, kissing the older women on both cheeks. Pretending he could not hear the things he had spent his whole life pretending not to hear. His granddaughter had started working there at 15. Her mother had died young. Her father had not been the kind of man you could count on. Her grandfather had raised her in the apartment above the restaurant. She had grown up wiping down tables and folding napkins and learning every face that walked through the front door. She knew which regulars liked their wine breathing first. She knew which ones tipped on the subtotal and which ones tipped on the full bill. She knew which corner table was never to be touched. That table belonged to one man. He had been coming to the restaurant for almost 30 years. He came on Tuesdays. He came alone, or with one other man, never more than 2. He always sat with his back to the wall. He always paid in cash. He always tipped well, but never too well. Never in a way that drew attention. Her grandfather had known him since they were both young. They had grown up on the same block. They had been altar boys at the same parish. One of them had stayed in restaurants. The other had not. There were certain things they did not talk about. There were certain courtesies that had held between them for 3 decades. One of those courtesies was that the man in the corner was treated like any other guest. No bowing. No whispers. No special menus. Just a clean table, a good plate, and a quiet check. The girl had served him 100 times. He had watched her grow up across 30 winters, the way you watch a neighbor's child grow up, without ever really knowing them. He had asked on her 16th birthday whether her grandfather was treating her right. He had not asked again. He left her a small envelope at Christmas every year. He never made her feel watched. He never made her feel anything at all. In that neighborhood, from a man like him, that was its own kind of kindness. She had not seen him in 6 months. The last time he had been in, it had been a cold night 6 months ago. She had not been showing yet. The man she had been planning to marry had still been alive. A lot had changed since then. She had stopped wearing her ring on the 3rd finger of her left hand and started wearing it on a chain around her neck. She had stopped sleeping through the night. She had started a second job, 3 mornings a week cleaning offices, because the baby was coming and the restaurant alone was not going to be enough. She had also stopped speaking to her grandfather about certain things. There were certain things he could not bear to hear out loud. He had cried only twice in his life that she knew of. Once at her grandmother's funeral. Once when the police came to the back door of the restaurant on a cold morning 6 months ago and asked him to come down to the morgue and identify a young man who had been found on a street corner 6 blocks from where they were standing, at 1:15 in the morning. She had not gone with him. He had not let her. He had gone alone in his old gray coat in the rain, and he had come back 2 hours later and sat down at the bar in the empty dining room and put his head in his hands and not spoken for the rest of the day. After that morning, certain words had stopped being used in the apartment above the restaurant. The word fiancé, the word corner, the word that month. The old man had not told her not to use them. He simply went very still whenever she did, and after a while, out of kindness more than anything else, she had stopped using them too. They cooked together. They opened the restaurant together. They closed the restaurant together. They did not talk about it. That was the agreement they had not made out loud. The girl was 22 years old. The man in the corner was 61. He had been the head of his family for 19 years, and a soldier in it for 21 years before that. He had buried 2 brothers and 3 friends and 1 wife. He had a daughter in another city he saw twice a year. He had a son in a cemetery on the other side of the river he visited every Sunday. He had no grandchildren, and no one had ever heard him express an opinion on the matter. On the night this story took place, the door of the restaurant swung open at 28 minutes past 10. The bell rang the way it had rung 1,000 times. He walked in alone. The girl was the one carrying the bread. She did not cry when she saw him walk in. She had promised herself she would not. She tied her apron a little tighter under the curve of her belly. She picked up the wine list. She walked over to his table the way she had walked over to it 100 times before. He looked up. He saw the belly. He saw her face. He did not say anything for a long second. Then he asked her what she would recommend tonight, the way he always did. She told him the linguine, the way she always did. That was that. The night went on. She got through the appetizer. She got through the second glass of wine. She got through clearing the plate. The bell over the door rang again at 5 minutes past 11, and 4 men walked in. They sat 2 tables away from his, against the wall. They did not order food. They ordered a bottle of red and 4 glasses. They did not greet him. He did not greet them. She knew 3 of the 4 by face. One of them she knew by name. He was the older man's nephew. He had grown up in the same parish as the girl. He had been 6 years older than her, and had never once been kind to her in any year of any of those decades. The nephew was looking at his uncle. His uncle was not looking at him. The girl brought the 4 men their bottle and 4 glasses. The nephew did not look at her belly. The nephew did not look at her at all. He had not looked at her since the funeral. There was a reason for that. She knew the reason. He knew she knew the reason. Nobody had ever said it out loud. She walked back to the corner table with the dessert tray. He waved it away. He asked for the check. She brought the check. He looked at it. He reached into his coat. He took out his money clip. He folded the bill. He slid it across the table to her with one finger, the way you slide a chess piece. Slow. Deliberate. Public. $500. On a $40 check. Everyone in the room saw it. The 4 men, 2 tables over, saw it. The couple by the window saw it. Her grandfather, standing near the bar with a towel folded over his arm, saw it. Nobody breathed. She looked down at the bill. She looked at her belly. Then she put her fingertips on the edge of the money. She pushed it back across the table toward him slowly, all the way back to his side, until it was sitting in front of his hand again. She said, in a voice that did not shake even though her hands did, that she could not take it. She said it quietly. She said it without anger. She said she could not feed her child on his money. She said her child's father had been killed by his men 6 months ago, on a corner 6 blocks from where they were sitting, and she would not pretend not to know it. She said she would not stand at his table 6 months later and accept his tip like nothing had happened. She said she was sorry. She said she had to say it. Then she stepped back from the table and waited. The corner of the dining room went still in a way that was not quiet, because the silence had a sound to it, a pressure, like air right before a storm. Her grandfather had gone the color of paper. The four men at the table by the wall had stopped moving entirely. All four of them, all at once. The way men in that line of work stop moving when something has just gone very wrong in front of them. The older man did not look at the four men. He did not look at her grandfather. He did not look at the door. He looked at her and only at her for a long count of breath. His hand was still resting near the bill. His face did not change. He had a face that did not give things away. That was part of what he was famous for. That was part of what had kept him alive for 40 years in a job that did not usually let men live 40 years. He did not pick up the money. He did not pick up the money, and that, in that room in front of those four men, was the first sign that something had shifted. In 30 years, in that dining room, in any room he had ever sat in, he had never let an offer of his lie on a table. He had never been refused. He had never been spoken to that way by a woman, by a waitress, by anyone. He had never, in front of his own crew, allowed a moment to pass without an answer. He folded his hands on the table in front of him. He looked at her for another long second. Then he asked her gently to sit down. She did not sit down. She told him she could not. She told him she was working. He nodded. He accepted that. He asked her instead, in the same gentle voice, when. When had it happened? Where had it happened? The name of the man. The name of the corner. The hour of the night. She told him. Her voice was steady. She had rehearsed these answers 100 times in her head, for police officers who never asked them, for priests who only said sorry, for friends who looked away. So when he asked, she had the answers ready, and she gave them to him the way you hand over a sealed envelope. Without commentary. Without tears. She told him the name of her fiancé. She told him the name of the corner. She told him the hour was 1:15 in the morning. She told him the date in November. The older man listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. When she was finished, he closed his eyes for a moment, just one moment, and then he opened them again. For 3 breaths he did not move. The dining room did not move. The four men at the wall did not move. The couple by the window had stopped pretending to read the menu and had set the menu down on the table. The candle on the corner table guttered once and steadied. The older man laid his hand flat over the $500. He did not pick it up. He just covered it. The way you cover a thing you do not yet want to look at. Then he asked her, in a voice softer than any voice he had used all night, whether she was sure. Sure of the date. Sure of the corner. Sure of the men. She said she was sure. She said one of them had stopped at the restaurant 2 weeks after and had ordered a plate of veal and had eaten it slowly and had left a normal tip and had walked out. She said she had served that plate. She said she had washed that fork. She said she would never forget the way he had eaten that veal. She said she did not want revenge. She said she wanted only that nobody in this dining room ever again pretended in front of her that nothing had happened. He nodded once. He told her to go to the kitchen for a few minutes. He told her, very gently, that he would speak to her again before he left. He told her to take her time. She went. She walked through the swinging door into the kitchen. The kitchen smelled like garlic and lemon zest in bread. The 2 cooks looked up. They looked at her face. They looked back at their cutting boards and pretended they had not. She walked to the sink. She turned on the cold water. She put both her wrists under it. She stood there for a long time. The cook nearest her, an old Sicilian who had worked for her grandfather since before she was born, set down his knife and walked over and put his hand on her back, just once, and walked back to his board, and that was all anyone said. The dishwasher kept running. The fan over the stove kept turning. In the dining room, the silence held. If you are still with me, hit that subscribe button. In the dining room, the older man turned in his chair. He turned all the way around. He looked directly at the table by the wall where the four men were sitting. He looked at his nephew. The nephew was looking down at his plate. He was looking at his plate very hard. His knife was still in his hand. His shoulders were the shoulders of a man who already knew. The older man watched him for 10 full seconds. He did not say his name. He did not have to. The other 3 men at the table understood what was being asked of them without anything being said at all. One of them set down his glass. Another folded his napkin. The third put both of his hands flat on the table, palms down, the universal posture of a man telling another man that he is unarmed and uninvolved. The older man spoke to his nephew across the dining room. He spoke in a normal voice. He did not raise it. He did not lower it. He said, "You sat at my table at Easter." He said, "You ate at my house in March." He said, "You took an envelope from me in April, for the boy, for the christening, and you thanked me and you kissed my hand." He said, "Did you sit at my table in April and not tell me what you had done 6 months ago?" The nephew did not answer. The nephew did not lift his head. The older man said, "Look at me." The nephew lifted his head. His face was the color of wet cement. The older man said, "Did you give that order?" The nephew's mouth moved. No sound came out. The older man said, "Did you give that order in my name?" The nephew closed his eyes. He nodded once. He opened them again. He said yes. He said it loud enough that the couple by the window heard it. He said it loud enough that the cook at the pass heard it. He said it loud enough that her grandfather behind the bar heard it and set down the towel he had been folding and closed his eyes. The older man turned back around. He faced the empty corner of the room. He sat very still for almost a full minute. Then he stood. He buttoned his coat. He walked slowly across the dining room to the swinging kitchen door. He pushed it open with one hand. He did not step through. He spoke into the kitchen. He asked her to come back out. She walked back out. Her wrists were red from the cold water. Her apron was straight. He walked her gently by the elbow back to his table. He pulled out her chair. He waited. She sat. Then he turned again, this time to face the whole dining room, the 4 men, the couple by the window, the cook at the pass, her grandfather behind the bar. He said loud enough for all of them, "I did not know." He said, "I did not order that." He said, "That was not done with my permission." He said, "That was not done in my name." He said, "I am telling you now, in front of these men, in front of her grandfather, in front of this dining room, that a man at that table by the wall did a thing 6 months ago that I did not sanction." He said, "There will be an answer for it." He said, "And I am sorry." He turned to her. He said her name. He said, "I am sorry to you, Gina Salerno, and I am sorry to your child, and I am sorry to your grandfather, Tommaso, who is my oldest friend." He said his own name then too. He said, "I am Don Vito Marchetti, and I am telling you in front of these witnesses that this debt is mine." He said the word sorry. Out loud. 3 times. In front of his crew. In that world, in that room, a man like him did not say that word. A man like him did not say it to a king, let alone to a waitress. The word was not in the vocabulary. The word was a kind of small death. And he had just said it 3 times. Gina did not know what to do. She had come back out to the dining room ready to be told to clock off early, ready to be told the matter was closed, ready to be told to never speak of it again. She had not come ready for an apology. She had not come ready for anything that felt like being seen. She sat at the table with her hand resting on the edge of the wood, and for the first time in 6 months, she let herself cry. Just a little. Just 2 tears. She wiped them away fast with the back of her wrist. Vito saw it. He did not comment on it. He stood up. He pushed his chair in. He left the $500 sitting on the table. He told her very quietly that it was not a tip. He said it was for the baby. He said her grandfather would explain. He said she did not have to take it tonight. He said she did not have to take it ever. He said the choice belonged to her, and only to her, and he was sorry he had not asked first. Then he walked over to the table by the wall. He stopped behind his nephew's chair. The nephew was a man named Marco. Marco Marchetti. Vito put one hand lightly on the back of the chair. He did not put his hand on Marco's shoulder. He did not raise his voice. He leaned down, and he spoke into Marco's ear for about 15 seconds, in a voice too low for anyone else to hear. Marco did not move. Marco did not look up. When Vito straightened up again, he nodded once to the other 3 men at the table. He walked out of the restaurant. The bell on the door rang behind him. The same small bell that had rung for 60 years. Marco stayed in his chair for another full minute. Then he got up slowly, and he walked out too. The other 3 men followed him, in the particular order that men in that line of work walk when something has gone wrong and everyone is being watched. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody left a tip. The door rang 3 more times. Then the restaurant was quiet again. Tommaso walked across the dining room. He stopped in front of his granddaughter. He did not say anything. He just put his hands on her shoulders, the way he had put his hands on her shoulders the first day he ever let her carry a tray. He stood there with her. After a long moment, he kissed her on the forehead and went back to the bar. The $500 stayed on the corner table until closing. Nobody touched it. Gina finished her shift. She brought the bill to the couple by the window. She wiped down the bar. She did the thing she always did. When the lights came down and the front door was locked, she walked back to the corner. She stood in front of that table for a long time. Then she picked up the money. She folded it once. She put it in the small envelope her grandfather kept in the drawer behind the register for emergencies. She wrote a single word on the front of the envelope. The word was the baby's name. The name she had chosen 3 weeks ago and had not told anyone yet. Not even her grandfather. The name was her dead fiancé's name. The name was Daniel. She had decided that when she heard the heartbeat for the second time. She locked the envelope in the drawer. She turned off the last light in the dining room. She climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment above the restaurant. She lay down on the bed in her clothes. She slept for the first time in 6 months without dreaming. 3 days later, on a Friday morning, Marco was arrested by federal agents on a charge that had nothing to do with Gina, on evidence that nobody in the family could quite trace, on a tip that had come in from a payphone in a part of the city where nobody from that family ever went. He was not seen on the street again for a very long time. The arrest made the back page of one newspaper. It did not make the back page of any of the others. The 3 soldiers who had ridden with him that November night were quietly moved out of the neighborhood, one by one, over a period of 6 weeks, to jobs in other cities, in other capacities, doing work that did not involve guns. One of them ended up driving a delivery truck in New Jersey. One of them ended up running a small laundromat in Philadelphia. The third one was never heard from again, and Tommaso, when his granddaughter asked him about it once, looked at her for a long moment and then changed the subject and asked her if she wanted soup. The street corner where Daniel had died went quiet. The bodega on that corner reopened. The owner replaced the front window. He repainted the door. A small bunch of flowers appeared on the lamppost on the 11th of every month for a year and then stopped, and nobody ever found out who had left them. Gina walked past that corner exactly once after the baby was born. She walked past it on a warm Sunday in August with the boy in a stroller, and she stopped for a minute on the curb across the street, and she pointed at nothing in particular, and she told the baby, in a voice too quiet for anyone else to hear, the name of his father. Then she walked the rest of the way home. Vito continued to eat at the restaurant on Tuesdays. He sat at the corner table. He ordered the linguine. He left a normal tip, the kind you leave on a $40 check. He did not speak to Gina about what had happened that night. She did not speak to him about it either. In that neighborhood, That was its own kind of agreement. Once in the summer, when the baby was already kicking visibly, and Gina was carrying water glasses with both hands, Vito stood up as she passed his table and pulled out a chair for her without saying a word. She sat for 30 seconds. She did not speak. He did not speak. Then she got up and went back to work. That was the closest they came to a conversation about it, ever. The baby was born in July. It was a boy. He had his father's eyes and his great-grandfather's stubborn jaw, and a small, perfect cry that filled the apartment above the restaurant, the way music fills a small room. Gina was 23 by then. She went back to work in September. She still served the corner table on Tuesday nights. She still tied her apron the same way. She still walked the same 2 worn curves across the tile floor that Tommaso had walked for 50 years before her. The boy learned to walk in the dining room between the lunch shift and the dinner shift. He learned the word grandpa before he learned the word mama, because Tommaso took him into the kitchen every afternoon and let him stir the polenta with a wooden spoon almost his own size. He grew up loved. He grew up safe. He grew up in a building where men in dark coats sometimes sat in the corner and ate quietly and nodded at his mother when they left, and he did not understand, for a very long time, why his mother always nodded back exactly the same way, neither warmly nor coldly, the way you nod at the weather. Every Christmas, for the next 11 years, until Tommaso finally died of a heart that had been carrying too much for too long, a small white envelope arrived at the restaurant. It was addressed to the boy by his full name. There was a folded bill inside. There was no note. There was no signature. There was nothing else. The envelope always came by hand. It was always under the door on the morning of the 23rd. Nobody ever saw it arrive. Gina never opened them in front of her son. She put them all in a wooden box on the top shelf of her closet, behind the linens, where the boy could not reach them even when he started getting tall. She did not spend the money. She did not bank the money. She did not count the money for the first 11 years. She simply put each envelope, unopened, into the box, and she closed the lid, and she went back downstairs and worked her shift. When the boy turned 18, she sat him down at the corner table on a Sunday afternoon when the restaurant was closed. She put the wooden box on the table between them. She told him the story. The whole story. Exactly the way I have told it to you tonight. She did not leave anything out. She did not soften anything. She did not pretend to him that the world was simpler than it was. She let him decide for himself what to do with the money, and what to do with the name, and what to do with the memory of a man he had never met. A man who had once, on a quiet Tuesday night, said the word sorry out loud in front of his own crew to a pregnant girl in an apron, because she had been brave enough to slide $500 back across a table, and because, in the end, even in that world, in that room, honor still meant something to the men who had spent their whole lives pretending it did.